Well, hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut, the host of Helping the Brave. Let's bring in our guest today, Eric Donoho.
Hey, how's it going, Ed?
It's
Glad to be
going
with
good.
you.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. I was getting messed up there. Almost said all the other things you told me to say ahead of time. Donahue. And it's not even spelled like Donahue.
No,
Yeah.
no, I really thought
I
you were
like
gonna.
do no
I thought
ho.
you were gonna go with do no ho.
Not only is that a good way to spell your name, but that's a good thing to have when you go in deployments.
Right. especially, especially for all you out there, young enlisted guys that are married. Remember that,
Or not even married. Do know.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean for
Because I was a
safety
corpsman.
purposes.
I took care of babies. Right. So, yeah, we'll just move on from there. It always comes back to haunt you later.
I wouldn't know. I was.
I was a corpsman. I told you so.
Well, yes, yes. No, I'm from my standpoint, I had a drill sergeant right in the beginning. You joined the infantry, and the first thing he talked to us about was in our careers, if we wanted to be successful, to only interact with the women in a professional way and never any more than that. And that was all. I took that advice, and shortly after I got into the military, anyways, I ended up meeting my wife on a flight from Atlanta, Georgia, to Anchorage, Alaska. So, I mean, there wasn't much room for me there, but I always listened to that for that very reason.
Right. Since you brought up the enlistment, what service were you in, and why did you join it?
I was in the U.S. Army, and the reason I joined, um, honestly, the biggest reason is I wanted to see if I could hack it. I wanted to see what I was made of. But I mean, the deeper reason is I come from a long line of sheepdogs, and we were at war, and I kind of felt like maybe it's just my time to serve and to provide those same kind of things that everyone in my family had done before me.
I actually meant why Army.
Oh,
Sorry, I wasn't clear.
yeah. Well, I mean,
I like the reason why you joined the military.
there you go. There's your reason why. Army grunt. Can't understand basic
Was your
things.
family in the
No,
Army?
I'm just. My dad was in the Army. He served as a ranger in Vietnam. He was in the Charlie Company LERPS section, and so when I decided to join, my goal and my long-term goal when I joined the military was to eventually, test for my Green Beret. I didn't get the chance. I served almost 5 years, 4.5 years, somewhere between 4.5 and 5 years, and I got retired for getting blown up too many times over in Iraq.
All right. Well, we'll get into that in a second. And just so if you I see, I remember exactly. It was 5 years, 5 months, and 14 days. That's how bad I wanted out. Um,
The other day I had to call DFAS, and the only reason I'm saying it's even that is because they were like, "What do you mean you only were in for like a little under 4 years?" And they were the ones who corrected me the other day.
oh, really?
They're like,
Yeah.
"You have almost 5 years." I'm like, "Oh,
Okay.
cool.
Yeah.
Didn't
So I'm
realize
also,
that."
I have 6 years, but the last part was inactive, and I
Mm,
missed the Iraq War by 2 days. So,
mm.
yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, I know.
You
I
didn't
tell
really miss too much.
everybody, yeah, if you don't have to go to combat, the best thing is to miss the
No.
war if possible.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't wish it on anybody. I was talking to a Marine today at lunch, and he was talking about how he had the caked on salt and stuff, how bad it was on their skin, and how it still has marks on its arms today. And it's been since, we were talking 10 years he's been out or more. And just what they went through, because there was no showers, no this, no that. And now, he's saying how he was eating and the flies were all over and how bad it was over there. It's just one of those things that you don't really want to have to deal with if you don't want it, if you don't have to.
No, no, it's not. At the end of the day, I mean, we'll see what history turns out to be, but as of right now, it doesn't look like you missed anything.
Well, I missed a lot because I've talked to a lot of people, and two of them at the table, one was Army, one was Marine, and they were talking about how to this day if the traffic backs up, they turn off. and go somewhere else. So
Yeah, I mean,
what
it's
because they were on, different things that they did, and it was just that's how they got blown up and other stuff while they were over there. So
yeah, no, I mean, still to this day, if I see something in the road, I'm not driving over it. I specifically either drive in the slow lane or the fast lane for one of two purposes. So that way, if something's in the road, I can make my way around it.
yeah, well, I do that, and I wasn't even over there. So
Yeah, right.
yeah,
I
I mean, we
mean,
all learned. Yeah,
those are just those institutional things that
that,
I think I still wear whenever I get in the car. I still put on eye protection.
I always
I mean, yeah, there's just like these things that are ingrained in us.
Yeah. Well, it's also I asked the other day. It's like when I went and saw a bunch of vets up at UOP, which is a college here, before our fire walk, and we all got out of the vehicle and we locked our car, and it was like chirp 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 chirp. And the question is how many times you have to push the button to make sure your car is locked.
I do at
They're
least
laughing.
3.
Exactly, that's the number right there. My wife used to get all over me, and she's like, "You locked it." Okay, click. What I mean? It's just
I always blame it on the brain injury, well, the traumatic brain injury. But I mean, that's legitimately did I get it? And then I'm like, you know what? I'll do it one more time. And
yeah.
I get further enough away and I'm like, let's just see how far this range can go.
But as much as you want to call it, I assume your TBI is what you're talking about.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think it's just what's ingrained with us to make sure things are for sure the way they're supposed to be. That it's just something. Because to this day, I'll close all the doors in the house. I was on, even though I wasn't stationed on a ship, it was still ingrained in me, the hospital and other stuff that you close, watertight.
Yeah.
But I also look at if your house catches on fire, what's the best way to keep your house from burning down super fast? Keep the doors closed. And
Right.
then, I mean, I could justify it any way you want, but it's still ingrained from then, what you learn while you're in.
Well, see, for me, it's the exact opposite. So when you said that, I was like, oh, well, yeah, I could see that with the Navy, because of the being on the ship and the watertight doors and all that sort of thing. But for me, after being in Iraq, like if I came home and all my doors were closed, like I'm
You
gonna
freak
have
out.
issues because I want to be able to see in the rooms, right?
Yes.
Like, so
Yeah.
it's like one of these things that like I keep it all open so I see if something's off. So it's interesting how either branch does it. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, yeah, but the difference was even though I was stationed with the Marines at Camp Pendleton, I didn't actually, we were not doing things like you would be doing, even though I was there. All right, let's back.
I served with the Marines for 10, 11 months of my deployment
Well, a
because
lot of you
even
guys do.
because even you guys need heroes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's exactly it. You guys
It
need to
is.
see what the men's department of the Marines of the Navy does. Yeah, I can say that because I was corpsman, so I was with the men's department. Um, no, I mean it's because my son's like, dude, the corpsmen, you guys are freaking amazing because he's over.
Mhm.
I just say he's coming back from Korea, and he's like, you guys just what they know, and then I go, yeah, it's a totally
It
different.
is.
Yeah,
I always said after my experience, so we literally came up. We worked in an area called Karma, Iraq, and that area, the Marines had handed off to the Iraqi army, and then it just became an Al Qaeda stronghold, and you all were focused on Fallujah, and so we came up to support in Karma, and I'll tell you, it was an entirely different space as an Army infantry member of the Scout Sniper platoon. Like, the fighting force of the Marines takes priority when you're at war, and that is the reverse sometimes in the Army.
really.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
All right, so you were in. So we were all over the place today. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I know that can
That's
also
okay.
happen because of my TBI.
That's all right. I'm running in and out of a TBI. We just got off on a tangent and we just kept going, which is okay. It's our podcast. We can talk any way we want. When you were in for a little under 5 years, according to what you were just told.
Mhm.
And so when you were over there and you were, how long were you deployed? Because you said Alaska, so I assume you got stationed in Alaska. Your first
Yes.
station. Yeah,
So I got
that's where my son
stationed.
got. That's where my son went. Yeah.
Yes. So I got stationed with what used to be the 4th Brigade, 25th Infantry Airborne Division, which was a new airborne division that they had stood up in response to 9/11. Our headquarters were stationed out of Hawaii. And then specifically, my battalion was the 3rd Battalion, 509th, which they're still active in Fort or J Bear.
Mhm.
It used to be Fort Richardson. Now it's Joint Base Elmendorf Richardson. And 509th is still active there, but the 425 was retired, and I forget what it turned into now. But we deployed in 2006, the fall. We all came home by January 2008. Me personally was 14 months. And then in 10 of those, 10 or 11 of those, I can wear a first meth patch, second meth patch, and third meth patch. So I actually went through the whole rotation and got to meet all of the different groups that came over. And y'all run a lot. And then
Remember, I'm
came,
not a Marine. I'm
well,
yeah, yeah.
I know Marines don't have their own corpsmen though.
Well,
So if you
they
were
don't have their
on,
own
if
doctors, they have corpsmen
right,
because no doctor's dumb enough to be with the Marines.
so you all go over there. So because while you were a Navy corpsman, the fact that you were stationed on a Marine base, the Marines, at least this is how this was explained to me, would call you a Marine.
Yeah, well, if you're, let's put it this way: we have I have a better relationship with my Marines than I do Navy people. How about that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a different operating, a
even though I was
different.
at the hospital there at the and then I was with them for a short period, but really at the hospital, it just the way you deal with them and everything you deal with. So
And they're serious people. Like,
yes,
I
they are.
mean,
Yep.
they don't, they are, their level of discipline is incredibly high. As much as I joke and I kid my Marines, like, it was after deployment that I was like, if I was to, the Marines, is if I had it over to do again, I would have joined the Marines, honestly. Um, Based on what I learned about how they treated their grunts during war.
You're saying they treated them better.
Oh God, they're their priority.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Army is. I didn't realize how big the Army was until my son joined, and the reason he joined the Army was because the Air Force wouldn't give him the job he wanted and wouldn't guarantee the job. Let's put it that way. Army did. And then he
Mhm.
asked me, "Do you want to go? Should I go talk to the Navy?" I'm like, "No, because you'll be on a ship. You won't be lucky like your dad, never to see a ship. You'll actually be on a ship, and you won't like that at all." Because
Yeah.
he's a snowboarder, all those outside kind of, and I'm like, "There's no way you're going to enjoy that." Yeah, even if you're stationed in the Marines, it's not going to be forever. And
Well, and heaven forbid, like you go into the Navy and then realize you get seasick when you're out in the sea. I never realized that until much later in life. So I wouldn't have known. You know what I mean? Luckily, like my dad just kind of was like, nah, Army.
yeah,
But
well, the Marines get moved around by the Navy, so you
right.
shouldn't have been the Marines then.
Yeah, that well, and again, that's I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah,
Um,
they call us their Ubers.
but then again, I chose to jump out of planes, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense either.
And so did my son. I mean, that's why he liked airborne. He was like, "I got airborne." Well, you're not. Good thing you can't. You're colorblind, so you can't be a ranger.
Well, I mean, here's what I will say: anything worth doing in the army, you need to be airborne qualified for. So it was like I never understood it. I didn't particularly enjoy it, and I always needed to be in the middle of the chalk because it was the whole thing that just pushed me out the door.
Right, because otherwise you'd be the one that turned around
Oh,
not
I hated it.
chop,
Hated it.
not
Yeah.
jump. Yeah,
And I'm deathly afraid of heights. Now I can climb a mountain and it not be a big deal because that's like a fixture, that's a landscape that's made by God, even though that's crazy because those rocks break all the time. Never get scared looking down, none of that. You put me in a plane, on a building, walking steel, any of that kind of stuff, I'm deathly terrified.
I understand. That's why I'm like, I would never jump out of a perfectly good plane. So,
Yeah, I mean, well,
but you did. Go
the
ahead.
other thing I always thought about is, I mean, if I'm out, they also make you pack your weapon, right? So if you're out and you're jumping with your weapon in a case, then you're just hanging out and like, okay, I'm a target. Like I've never understood that.
All right. So you're in. So, all right. So when did you get injured?
So I got blown up 3 times, 2 IEDs, 1 EFP, and then I also
For people who don't know,
what
what's EFP?
EFP is an explosively formed penetrator. It's similar to a roadside bomb, except these are like shaped charges, and they use think of like a manhole cover, and they pack a whole bunch of explosives behind it, and they point it at a vehicle. When those explosives go off, it takes that manhole cover and turns it into a solid piece of like metal, a slug that's meant to go through 10 inches of armor.
And it does, I
Um,
assume.
and those were the man killers. And luckily, they had just pointed it too high, and we all walked away, not unscathed, but we all lived. Then I also survived a Katusha rocket attack on the Chow Hall one day when we were eating. So there were a number of different blasts over there that when we talk about different injuries, so wide range of days. Most notably, the biggest notable day was Valentine's Day. They made sure to show me some love.
There you go. So you can remember what day it is, what Valentine's Day is every year.
Absolutely.
You never forget it.
Yep.
So when you did you get so after your last, so you must have been medically discharged after your last hit, right?
Well, so I made it all the way through deployment. I didn't complain. I just rode with it and adapted, overcame, and then we
So
made
you
it.
weren't checked out. They had
Oh,
issues.
I was checked out. The last one, 3 of us were sent back to base. So the first 2 IEDs, um, and the rocket for the Katusha rocket, people in my chain of command at that time, including myself, were not aware that those were available to get Purple Hearts or any of those sort of things. So you'd get like checked out by Doc, our medic for our platoon, and that sort of thing. It wasn't until my last EFP that they actually sent us back because of concussions and
Okay.
throwing up and a number of other things. And they were like, hey, look, we didn't know this, but we should have been giving you guys Purple Hearts for all of these. And so, yeah, that's
We
where
shouldn't
that
be
ended up.
treating you, but we should just give you Purple Hearts.
Well, I mean, what are you going to do for the treatment? They didn't know back then. See, that's like the thing, when I look back at
You're talking about 2008. Is that when it?
2000, so it was 2006 is when I served over there. So I was over from 2006 to 2007, or through 2007. So tail end of 2006 through 2007, right till the end. I came back, I think, in November of 2007. And so November 2007, because Paula was born on Veterans Day then. So the process for that whole thing, there was nothing there. It was just starting. The news media was outraged about traumatic brain injury. The military still didn't really have a handle on it. The only group that really had a handle on brain injuries was the NFL.
Right. Well, they really did.
And
They still didn't for a long time.
right. And they don't. And I would argue none of us still really do, because we still, it's still in its infancy, but it's light years from where it was back then. So for then it was like, hey, rest, don't go to sleep, all of these things.
That's
And
that's
now,
the protocol.
right. And now we know, like, actually sleep is good. Like all of these different things, water, lots of water after, and then brain PT. There's a whole protocol that's developed
They
now
should have
that
they should have hyperbaric chambers over there. Right.
Well, again, they didn't
I'm
even
just
know
saying,
that back then.
I know, but it
Mhm.
just if they did, I'm not a doctor, but I just assume with what I know now, what it does and how it helps people, it would seem to help heal that much faster if it had more oxygen to the brain to get that
Yeah,
stuff out of there.
well, and I'm a firm proponent of that. Should be, if you have an infantry unit or people who are in high engagement, right, throwing grenades, launching mortars, laying lead down range, they're in effect, and in all intensive purposes, your, elite athlete, whether it's, the mainline army, Marines, whatever, all the way up to, your special forces and your operators. So, um, at the lowest level, they should be providing functional PT for these guys. They should be providing things like hyperbaric chambers. They should be providing massage therapy and cupping, dry needling, like all of these things to keep our body continually moving forward. And instead, what we are told is suck it up, don't talk about it, move on. And eventually, what ends up happening is your body breaks down and you're 46 years old, like me, or a number of other people out there.
So you must have had fun going to the VA.
I don't go to the VA anymore. I'm very fortunate that my wife works. So we
But I
have,
mean, to go through your disability and all that, how was that process?
I can't complain about that.
Okay. It's because
Um,
you had the medical records of, hey, he multiple
Yeah,
hits
so
on this.
so I
Yeah.
came home and they had just instituted, we were one of the first groups to go through what was called the post health assessment test. And I scored off the charts for traumatic brain injury and PTSD. And I mean, I was I was fine in my head. I just needed some help with migraines. But on the paper, I was off the chart. And so from that point, they moved me to Warrior Transitions Unit. And when it became clear that because of the brain injuries, the repetitive explosions, that I wouldn't be able to go back into the infantry, they were like, so you can choose finance or you can choose retirement. Those were my two options. And
So
I chose
finance, yeah,
finance. Yeah.
finance. Let's do numbers.
Yeah. Well, I think at the time that was one of the few. So I was a sergeant, and when you're a sergeant and you're reclassing as an MOS, it's about where do you have the most slots open. So at that particular time, they had the most slots. But a friend of mine that I had went with, and had gone through the program with, had chosen that route. And after he got into it, we talked, he's like, don't do that, they don't like you took a slot from one of them, now they can't grow up because you're moving in, nothing about what it is, you need all of their help, and they don't like you, just take retirement.
So with retirement, is it like true retirement, like you've been in for 20 years, or just out?
No. So retirement. I have a retired ID card. Access to base, all of that. Retirement money coming in. No. That gets offset because of the VA and all of that
So
sort
you
of
just get the VA
stuff.
benefits?
So yeah. So what Warrior Transition did for me, which I'm really grateful for and lucky, is that they basically set me up with everything that I needed to do. And I just followed their direction and I did what they told me to do. And eventually everything got worked out. It took a while, but I was already in. And so by the time they retired me, my benefits and, all of that sort of thing just kind of simultaneously kicked in. And so they did a really good job. I really credit the military, the army, with everything that I have in my life. If I could go back in and do it all over again, I would, without hesitation, without question.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people who don't have as good story as you do. And please
No,
understand.
yes, no, and I If you need those people, trust me, I can
Need
put
to-
you in touch with them.
no, I just
Um,
I want
but
everybody to come on and tell their
yeah,
story.
no,
It's not
but
that. It's
you know,
just
for me, but and a lot of those guys, when you get down to it, they didn't have those nurse case managers and those people managing their situation individually. They were
correct.
trying to manage it by themselves. And and so for me, that whole system just really did exactly what it was supposed to do. And it did it because the people who ran it were just stellar leaders. And you know, all of my time in Alaska, I was surrounded by stellar leadership. So
So this is
again, you know, I know
Alaska.
they're out. Yeah. So that's,
I
I
think it's
stayed in
Alaska.
Alaska.
I think it's Alaska that is the best one, is what I'm hearing. Because I remember talking to some, when I first started the show 4 years ago, somebody who worked up there as well, and what they did was totally different than everywhere else. So
Yeah. I mean, they were there, and they kind of got to be because they're so far removed from everywhere else. But from a leadership standpoint, they were always on it. I never I was angry most of the time, and they even took that with a grain of salt, and you know, did everything they could to try to fix that. It took a lot longer, but you know, yeah, no, my experience with that was great. I just didn't want to leave the military. I didn't want to
that's why you
stop
were
being a
angry.
grunt.
That's why you were angry, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
because you're
didn't
losing
voice it
purpose.
well,
Yeah.
and I didn't voice it out loud because then that would have to admit that I'm scared. So I'm a, you know, a newlywed. I didn't have a college degree. You know, what am I going to do with my family? How am I going to support my family? This was the trajectory that I was going to go. And then I felt like if I said that out loud or talked about it out loud, that I would be seen as weak.
And that's how most vets feel.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
why they don't ask for help. And I always
Right.
say, well, if you're pinned down, you're going to ask for air support. So what's the difference?
Right. Well, air support, they're not going to say no.
That's what I'm saying. It's the same thing.
No, I
It's
know. But in real life, though, like in real life, like when you say that, the problem in the veteran community is when you're in, right?
right.
Everybody's real tight. But then when you get out, right, there's a group of people who continue that brotherhood forward. I would say you're one of those people based on the communication we've had where you would answer that call. I try to be one of those people. I'm not always perfect, but I do know I've missed some calls, right? So
Hmm.
it's me being recognizing that I'm being humble. And so to the other person on the other end that I missed that call on, and by that point, you know, they were already mad or moved on or whatever it was, you know, I created an irrevocable harm because of that, if that makes any sense of what
I
I'm
understand,
saying.
but what I'm saying is the person themselves asks for help, whoever that is, whether it's through the VA, and I know they're not perfect, and or anywhere else. Somebody asks for help. They don't even ask for help.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. A lot of the times, the first time you do, the person isn't there, right? Like I know that the day I tried to kill myself, I reached out to a friend, and I was hoping that, you know, that call would happen. But I also knew that that friend wouldn't pick up the phone, which is
So that's
probably
why you
why I
called them.
call, which
Yeah.
is probably why I called that friend. But
Right.
that stuck with me for a very long time,
Right.
right? That little negative voice on my shoulder saying, "Hey, look, you tried." It took some clarity in getting help to realize the reason I picked that person was
Right.
because I knew that. But
Right.
what I'm getting at is until I had that clarity, that was the reason I didn't reach out.
So now, since we're here, it's taken us a little
Mm-hmm.
bit to get here.
Yeah.
Um, that is that why you were part of the 988 suicide and crisis line? I mean, how did you get from trying to commit suicide, and reaching out and that person not being there to get the help you needed? Because there's a lot of people.
So,
Let me explain. So I do Operation Firewalk. Started it 2 years ago. Was the thing through my Rotary. I interviewed a guy, Dave Albin, and he did firewalks with Tony Robbins for almost 20 years, and he was the fire captain. And someone asked if have you ever done a fire walk for veterans? And he's like, no. And she goes, would you want to? Sure. So they tried to do it on the East Coast and it didn't go through. Well, I talked to him and we had it done in 6 months was the first one. The second one just happened. But what I'm trying to get at, we're trying to get people to just talk about things, go through when we have people come and talk about not necessarily PTSD, but the last one we did. But then the second person was a fire captain, Bobby Seen, who had both towers fall on him on 9/11. And the next day he was out there picking up his brothers. So what the whole thing purpose is just to get connected with people. At that event, one of the persons that was there, a week later, he tried to commit suicide. So even though we were there talking about it and there to help them, he didn't even ask for help.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
So I think the best way for me to answer that is to just be as direct as possible. So what saved me was a phone call. And the reason that I got and fought for the 988 line is because I wanted everybody to have a Brent on the other end of the phone that called me. Eventually, I called somebody I knew would pick up the phone. And the reason that I did that is because by the time I ended up at the table, it was 6 years after I had gotten out of the military. I had been dealing with PTSD, traumatic brain injury. I didn't feel like I was making any progress moving forward, even though I was showing up day in and day out, putting in the work. Nothing was changing. My kids didn't care to really be around me. They preferred their mom. I was the stay-at-home dad. My wife and I were fighting more than we were talking. I learned that she wanted a divorce. Like, all of these things just kind of came to a head. And 6 years, after I had gotten out, almost 7, and I had that voice that was just, everybody would be better off without you. You're a failure. You can't make this happen. What I didn't know at that time when I sat at that table with the Glock is that I was dealing with the wrong injury. It wasn't that I didn't have PTSD. I did. I deal with it still. Those are things you will deal with for the rest of your life. But what I didn't realize is that I had a concurrent injury called moral injury, which manifests all the same symptoms as PTSD does, except that moral injury won't get better with the same type of treatments that you go through for PTSD. So with that being said, I had been putting in the work on PTS, but I didn't know anything about moral injury. And therefore, none of the symptoms, I wasn't getting better. None of the symptoms were getting better. And it wasn't that I was an actual failure. It was that I was dealing with the wrong issue. So that for me was kind of that catalyst. So when I sat down at my table and for whatever reason that trigger would not squeeze that day, I attribute it to God and my wife's faith. 2 days after that attempt, I got a phone call that my very first platoon sergeant in the military had taken his own life. And it struck me hard because we were both in the same place at the same time, and yet neither one of us reached out. We had fallen out, as you do in the military. Honestly, I think he was mad at me. I couldn't tell you what it was for. If it was today, I'd just be like, man, I'm so sorry, CJ, whatever I did. But the reality is we drifted apart. And so when this information hit me, the reality that I was about to create that same kind of anger and pain I was feeling to my wife and my kids kind of turned on the light bulb for me. And then I reached out to someone who I knew would answer the phone, my best friend, Brent. And it was that call and being on that call for almost 5 hours that created a trajectory and a plan that I instituted and set me on the path to sitting here and talking with you today.
So the moral injury, that's what you call it, right?
Yes, moral injury.
What is that so people understand?
So moral injury, the way that they define this from the way you can define it from a secular, God point of view is that it's when you are forced to do something that goes against your moral compass. So the extreme example would be, you were in a situation where you had to take someone else's life, and now you have to carry that burden with you, right? You can sit here and talk about all that you want. Well, they were going to kill you, so it's all right that you still took someone's life. That is a harm to your spiritual core that you have to deal with. And a lot of the times we don't talk about that. We don't talk about the spirit core part of who we are. And when that's left out of the conversation, healing doesn't really happen. And what I've learned about moral injury in the process of all of this is that it doesn't have to be as extreme as that. So for me, right when I deployed to Iraq, my wife was 7.5 months pregnant with our first son, David. And by the time I arrived in Camp Buehring, Kuwait, I got off a bus and had a Red Cross message that we had lost David. I needed to get back onto a flight and be home for the stillbirth. Got home for the stillbirth, buried our son, and less than 2 weeks later was back on a flight going back to Iraq. And what I didn't say to anybody in the process of all of that is that the Army offered me 6 months to stay at home. I didn't feel like I was emotionally equipped to be there to support my wife in a healthy way. I'm Irish Catholic. We deal with this in anger. And so I was like, no, my platoon needs me. In my head, I made myself sound bigger than what I was. And leaving my wife, she was able to get a gate ticket. And so when I gave her a hug and walked down the aisle, to get on the plane, and I turned back one last time and waved, and I see tears just coming down her face, that was a moral injury. I knew I wasn't making the right choice. When you're over in Iraq or Afghanistan and you saw someone hurting or beating a kid or a wife because they weren't working so hard or for whatever reason, and we weren't allowed to interfere with those type of domestic, situations, you're going to feel something on that. And these things take their toll after a while. And what they pull away from you is your ability to have faith in anything. And that's where I found myself. I didn't have faith in, humanity. I didn't have faith in the goodness of the human spirit. I didn't have faith in God. I didn't have faith in anything except my ability to keep myself and my family safe.
You said Irish Catholic, so I assume guilt had to do a lot with it in places
Yes.
like
Yeah.
Catholicism. I mean, I don't
Yes.
care.
Yeah.
I've been in every religion, and I'm more spiritual than religious today, just to make sure we have that there. But the guilt factor that are in some of those religions is also would affect that moral part of you, because of the more you feel more guilt to potentially. And I'm trying to be, easy here, but I could just see that would weigh on you later too.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the larger part about it that when you talk to veterans in themselves, right, the number one thing that you'll hear veterans talk about, especially with PTSD, right, is, well, when I go into a restaurant, I can't have my back to the door. I got to be scanning the room. Mm-hmm. That's your inability to have faith. The reality is you have a better chance of winning the Powerball than you do of, statistically speaking, of being in a first shooter scenario or an active shooter scenario.
Yeah, but I still do it to this day.
I'm there's no judgment. My point is,
no,
right,
I'm just saying, I just feel more comfortable seeing what's going on, because I don't want my wife to be the one seeing what's going on and not be able, I mean, it's just one of those, we talked about it earlier about a bunch of the stuff that we deal with. So.
Right. And so where I go with this is that one of the issues that I had with my wife is that she felt disconnected with me. So we would go out on these dates and we'd go out to a restaurant, and I, of course, would take the seat that would allow me to scan the restaurant. But then I had an inability to focus on her and only her and listen to what she was saying and feel like she's being heard, because what she was watching is me watch around the room. And so I understand that side. And then I understand this side too, which is there has to be a balance as a veteran, right? We have to be able to manage the security that's in those security thoughts that are ingrained into us, because society needs us to think like that, right? We're going to be typically the ones who notice something first, but we also have to be able to be present for those that we're, trying to be with in that moment, and not worried about something that's very unlikely to happen.
Right. Well, that's so I had a guy come over and talk at our Rotary the year I was president, and he was incarcerated for 23 years and created a program for vets not to be reincarcerated again after they get out, because he's like, PTSD will either kill you or you go to prison. And he's like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so but one of the things he talked about is we don't have a boot, we have a boot camp in, but we don't have a boot camp out. We need some type of boot camp out. And it's so much to a point where I finally started creating something just because of all the stuff I've been hearing. And after my firewalk, I came in back and I was like, we came up that night of the firewalk about how that we don't, we're tools of war. We come back as tools of war, and we don't know. No one teaches us how to unbecome tools of war. And we need something along that lines to do that. And
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say I'm right there with you 100% on everything you just said. We don't do a good job. We do a good job of putting them through, the uh, transitions program that is geared towards getting them a job for someone else, and conforming to society. And what we really should be doing is gearing them for all of the challenges that they're going to confront in society, which is in the military, it's black and white.
right,
There's a rule, you break it, there's a consequence. In the real world, it really isn't black and white. And if it is black and white, you hire a really good attorney to turn it gray. And so we live in a world of gray, and that makes that whole transition very difficult. So for me, I actually, this is the first time I'm announcing it on any podcast or any show. The press release hasn't even gone out yet. But I created a program called The Weight We Carry, Facing Moral Injury Together. It's, about an hour and a half long, and it's meant just to bring people together. It's a TED style talk on moral injury with a Q&A. And it's free to host, for anybody who wants to host it. You don't have to pay speaker fees. You don't have to pay any of that. You just have to provide the church, the venue, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. It can be outside as long as you have the permit at the park to do it, right? Like, the host job is just to provide the venue and the guest list for their area. And we work with them on doing that and putting out press releases and making sure that that host in that area then is someone that local veterans and can see and say, all right, hey, tell me more about this, right? So it's also about equipping them with knowledge about moral injury. So if you're interested in doing that, let me know. We can get off that. When we get off, I can set you up with something
well,
like
we can
that.
talk because
Yeah.
the thing I'm creating, it's got all these different avenues. I'm not running all these different things. The whole thing is not that. It's just one place to come to find that good information. And also, it's almost finished. It's in being WordPressed right now. They send it back to me. I'm like, okay, you got to make some changes here and all this, because I'm a perfectionist. I want it to look exactly like you sent me in the in the thing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's,
No, I know.
but,
I'm there with you. My
yeah,
book was that way.
yeah.
Yeah, my book was
My
that way.
book's that way too, back up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Over on
Yes.
the other side. There it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yours back there. Mine's
Yeah.
on the other side.
Oh, yeah, yeah. My bad. I was like, wait, am I not? Which
No,
way?
you got two of them back there. You're on both sides.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying there's so much I want to, for everything we lose when we get out, right? The brotherhood, all the different things. I want different people to run all those different things and be able to have multiple places to go. But you can't Google it. You can't chat GPT this information and find it.
No.
The 4 years of doing this podcast, all these nonprofits, if they overlap a little bit, they're silos. They don't want to help each other. And I think it's ridiculous. We need,
That's a whole conversation. Yeah.
yeah, that's
There's,
what I've dealt with. And I'm like, this is wrong. There's got to be a better way to do this. And that's what I'm trying to put together. There's a bunch of people who are doing different things. Even when I went to go back to get my benefits, how hard it was. A ranger helped me. And then I'm like, okay, you know what you could do? You could do this to help other people. And they're like, I don't know, it's okay. And I'm so now we created a whole thing about that, because that's just like, I'm close to the Bay Area in California. So when we talk about things, we have people who can do certain things so much easier and faster and cheaper than all these other people are doing.
I am all, yeah, no. Whatever I can do to help. When you push that out, let me know. I'll put it out on my network.
Well, it's because I need people to be part, because even the fitness side of what we get out, we forget, right? We don't do stuff. I have a whole bunch of people to run that stuff, even through, whether it's online or whatever, and you go get local areas, because you got to keep that stuff up.
I think the problem largely is that, I mean, well, there are over 48,000 veteran nonprofits in America. And, to put that in perspective for the audience, in the post 9/11 wars, there's just over 51,000 that were wounded.
So we've lost more of the PTSD to suicide.
Yeah, well, and
all three wars put together.
Yeah,
I'm not knocking what you're saying, but I'm just saying.
Like, I'm just saying that's a ridiculous amount of veteran nonprofits, especially considering that the reason that most veteran nonprofits start is because the veteran nonprofits that are in the space are more concerned about growing their nonprofit than serving their mission.
Right. And my whole goal is not even to really care about a nonprofit.
Right. That's
yeah.
No, that's mine too. Like, that's why I don't have a nonprofit. I'm not going to have a nonprofit. My company is a social impact company. We reinvest the funds that we make from the book, that we make from speaking engagements, along those things, from merch sales. They just go right back into the business to invest in veterans, to create awareness, to help pass legislation. And you don't need a nonprofit to do that. You just got to be willing to work.
And when you do any more legislation passage or whatever you need, let me know if you need help with anything. I'm on actual radio, talk radio.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I will do.
Yeah, I'm just saying, because I ran away from the military when I got out. I wanted nothing to do with it. It just wanted, it was just a bad thing for me. It got to a point when going through all my stuff, I realized that they sent me to speech therapy in my last 6 months because I wouldn't talk. I was done. I was just so freaking done with the stuff because I didn't see combat stuff. I saw some other stuff. And and it's we all have our own issues and our own stories, and everybody needs help, and everybody needs to get help from somebody. And I don't care how you get that help and what you use, you need to get the help.
A corpsman's job is living in trauma.
Yeah, but I mean, I even was in physical therapy, and it was in the wound care that one of the things that affected me the most, and it had nothing. It's just the pains I had to inflict on this one guy. That's
again,
and it's not like instantaneous stuff, you know what I mean? And you don't realize this stuff till later on. It was,
it takes a toll on you, right? Like, it's one of these things that it's like, I didn't realize it then, but I do now. And when I say that, I mean, like, every job, like, I could tell a story about a person who never left the fob, and I won't share their actual story. I'll just say they have every right to suffer 100% from severe PTS, and they never left the fob. Everybody has a story. I think it's important to listen to people's stories and not judge. I think Ted Lasso said it best: be curious, ask questions. Your story is yours. If you're secure in yourself, you don't have anything else to judge somebody else for. I'm not judging other people's service. I'm thanking them for it. And I just want to reiterate that with you because, of course you saw some stuff. I don't know if we're allowed to cuss. Of course you
No,
saw
it's
some
too late.
stuff. Like,
Yeah, we saw
you're
some
a
shit.
medic. I mean, you're at a Marine base. Those guys get drunk and do
And it
stupid
wasn't.
stuff.
Yeah, I wish it was
And it's
that, but it
not
wasn't.
even, and then on the flip side, as a patient of physical therapy, I know that my physical therapist does not take great, like, it it actually weighs on her when I come in, and she's got to do what she's got to do to keep me upright and to keep me off of pain meds. I'm not her favorite patient because of it.
Yeah. I'll tell you afterwards. But what we did at Camp Helen, we also pulled duty as EMTs, which really is, not just an EMT, it's a paramedic. That's how it was back in the
Yeah.
day. And we would get pulled to I-5 because we were so far out, Santa Onofre. And so we saw some stuff, but it's just what you never realize it until later. But now I knew why I gave up being in the medical field, you know. So there are some
Yeah.
people who strive for that and love it. I ended up being not one of them. So yeah.
It has its tolls. I think not every industry, but in the military, I think that almost every job can have its tolls, even finance.
I'm sorry, I just laughed for a second because he said even finance. Uh, all right.
I
So
am
what,
being serious.
I know, but
If
it's just
somebody
fun.
isn't getting their check right,
Yeah.
and that specialist got nothing to do with it, he's gonna get it from an E5 or an E6 who ain't getting his check. So like, they got their own level of PTSD. It may not be the same as what someone else goes through, but they're certainly gonna get theirs.
Well, one guy put it this way. He goes, sometimes people don't have the same training as we do. So what they see is more traumatic than what training we went
Yeah.
through. And to figure out what we would see as trauma is actually trauma would be more higher level trauma to affect us. But some people don't go through that. So you can't judge people from what their trauma is because you don't know what level they're at. What's
Right.
the deal with Canyon of Hope?
So Canyon of Hope is my book. It's just came out August of last year, and it was written to deal with moral injury. So I found myself having thyroid cancer in 2022, right after the PACT Act got signed into law. A few weeks after that, the biopsy and the PET scan came back, and I had thyroid cancer. So I started that journey, and having lost friends to rare cancers from the effects of burn pits, I started thinking about, whoa, what is it? It started to give me anxiety about my kids and this and that. So the book really came out of the two aspects. One, to make sure my kids have a good roadmap of what not to do. And then two, to really take on and confront this idea of moral injury. And so that's really what then the workshops are all meant to do around it. Is there's a companion guide that really dives into moral injury and then kind of picks apart the book and shows you shows you where I got it, what I did with it or what I did to try to get over it and heal from it. So it's been a journey. So far, I've performed what my publisher expected. It was a little low to begin with, anyways. But for me, I have this idea of where I hope to take this to, and for me, it's to make sure that veteran suicide ends. And so I've been a veteran for 15 years. Suicide numbers have been consistently at 17. I have now lost over 19. I really honestly don't know what the count is anymore. I stopped counting after Brent. And I know that based on my research and that my time in advocacy, the data that I have found is clear that moral injury is the leading reason and cause for veteran suicide. And so until we start actually talking about it and dealing with it and getting people to understand that, they could be dealing with multiple things, we're not going to see those numbers decrease. And, when you think collectively over the past 15 years, both publicly and privately, we've spent well over $1 trillion and we haven't budged the needle.
And I think it's, when I started my year's presidency, I did the challenge 22, I did a coin and everything because that was the number everybody used. But by the time I was finished with everybody I talked to and everything, I saw the numbers closer to 50 a day.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing. Yeah. Well,
the
here's
way
the
they
other
count the numbers is different. Yeah.
Well, and here's
It's like VA math. It's a little different.
Well, yeah, but I mean, this is a simple fix. This is what's so frustrating about this issue. This is a very simple fix. Congress could pass a law that requires every coroner to ask at the time of death, was this person a veteran? And when they check that box under, and then it gets uploaded into the system as a suicide, that veteran box is checked. That then allows the actual government to track, how many veterans are, what age ranges they are, and that all matters. The number one reason that doesn't happen is because of money.
Money because of a box.
Money, and I'm truly, like, as much as I'm as cynical as this may sound, I'm not so sure people want to actually solve the problem.
Because they make money off the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to solve the problem.
No, I do. I want to solve the problem. Veterans want to solve the problem. The problem is that when you start looking at veteran nonprofits, who's holding them accountable? Who's making sure that the funds are actually being spent in appropriate ways? Who's the one, charting the courses for them? And why is it that out of all of the major veteran nonprofits out there, there's only one of them that actually have a dedicated page to moral injury, even though the VA has put out a report that states that, moral injury is the group that suffers from moral injury are the highest at risk for suicide. Well, then you have to ask yourself, who's the group that suffers from moral injury? Anybody who has a spiritual component to their life. Well, that's an easy number to figure out from the military side, because when you join the military, you check what religion you are. Are you an atheist? Do you believe? Do you not believe? So I went back and I looked at the numbers for DOD. Over 71% of the military has identified as having some spiritual connection to some religion. 71%. In the VA, the study that I found by the Freedom of Religion Institute says that the VA, it's 91% identify as having some sort of spirituality to their life. And yet the VA, DOD, and almost all of the major nonprofits are not talking about moral injury in any real way that can connect with the veterans like myself and educate them that, hey, if you've been putting in the work with PTSD, you may not be a failure that you think you are. You might be dealing with the wrong issue, especially if you've been dealing with it for years and putting in the work, and to see the kind of levels that we're willing to go to, right? Like, we're willing to go to the extreme to legalize psychedelics. And I'm not against that. Just to be clear, I think they have a place in healing, and I could break that down. But I also think those psychedelics allow people to reach that moral injury faster, which is why they are able to heal faster and feel better. It brings down the walls quicker.
Right.
And so when you really look at what we're doing, we're willing to do all of this, but we're not willing to talk about the one piece that's at the foundation of it all, which is moral injury. And then when we do talk about it, we have to talk about it in a very sterile, non-religious, clinical way, so we can make it sound like psychology, but that's not what it is either.
Wow.
Sorry, I went on a long rant there.
No, we're fine.
I'm passionate about this issue because it really, the data is very clear on this.
Yeah.
It is the leading cause of veteran suicide, and we're not doing anything with it. If you look at, there's a group out there, and I could put you in touch with the CEO. I don't know him personally, but I've connected him to some other podcasts. They're called the Mighty Oak Foundation, and they've served over 2,000 suicidal veterans, and they've had 0 suicides.
Wow. Send them my way, please.
Will do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, that's just all these things that, excuse me, my son being in, right? And when he first got to Alaska, it was, guess what happened? Pandemic, right? The amount of people who committed suicide during that period of time that were specialists that were up there was just huge. We thought we were going to lose him also. At one point, they moved him to a different barracks, condemned barracks almost, and they forgot about him. What I'm getting at is,
yeah. Is he still in Alaska, by the way?
No, he's actually in Washington State. He followed me and he bought his first house at 21.
Nice.
So we'll just leave it at that. Yeah. So he,
nice. Good for him.
Yeah. Good.
Alaska. I still am connected to Alaska. My in-laws live up there, so I'm still up in Alaska a lot, and I was following it during that time frame, trying to help out best I could from.
They're all, and he was airborne, so it was even worse, right? So they're gung ho, ready to go, and go sit in your room.
Alaska is hard. It's you especially get into the wintertime, you've got maybe 4 hours of light. It is a really difficult place. Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
It's a very difficult place to live.
Yeah.
But the summers,
they like the summers. Yeah.
Summers make up for the winters, though. I'll tell you that.
No, it was nice to visit, nice to be there. We went there a lot, but now he's in Yelm, Washington is where he lives, but he's at Jaber or whatever that one is there, Joint Base, whatever that one is. But now, like I said, he's coming back today from.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it'll be good for him. Yeah,
9 months back. That's easy.
Yeah.
At least but he right now he wants to stay in, which is unusual.
I'll say
not unusual. I wasn't a lifer. I was in for my degree, whatever, and got out.
I think that I think it's a place that people can put their hat up and can put in a good career. Yeah. I really do believe that. I didn't realize that before I joined, right? But I do believe that now, and I literally wouldn't have anything that I have today if I wouldn't have served. So I get wanting to stay in wholeheartedly. It's a tough world out there in the civilian world right now.
Yeah, well, it's a tough. Yeah, well, that's why the thing I'm trying to create is important. To help, because the thing we lose our job, this and that, and the way that they help us transition out, because it's pretty much, it doesn't really work. If you're a retired person, officer or it's high, NCO or whatever, you don't have the same issue as somebody getting out after 6 years or 5 years or 8 years, or getting retired out. You were lucky to get out, but then you don't, what is your purpose? What do you do afterwards? And I've talked to so many people, that is the biggest thing we lose, is our purpose. And not only when we get out, we could use it a few years later too. Right. Every time we're like, oh shit, what do we do now? I've been in the mortgage industry for 20 some years. I definitely lost my purpose many times.
I don't blame you there. I was a realtor for a while. My passion is in building, but I became a realtor, so I have a understanding of that. And I like my mortgage people, but the realtor's profession is just like, no, thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm at the point where my goal, my passion now is helping vets no matter what, even though, even
Yeah.
though my focus has always been veterans, but really so much more lately and I'm not talking the lending side, that's always been there, but what can I do through helping the brave? What can we do through our benefits company to help people? And what can we do with a large language model to help vets with this and creating that other boot camp out kind of thing? It's just, there's so much I want to help vets with, and it's not about making money off of it. It's about
No.
helping, because as everybody knows that when you do things, then you get, I even created a store from my podcasts that the things that get sold from there, that money goes in to help Operation Firewalk grow and
Right.
create that everything I do is to help pay for something else to keep growing. So I don't have to pay
Right.
it out of my pocket.
Right.
And, and that's the whole purpose.
That's no, I mean, that's, I think, I think that, I think that you're absolutely spot on about guys losing their purpose. And I think and I love that you and I are modeling this in the same way and walking this. Cause I mean, the Operation Firewalk, I would imagine that is probably a nonprofit
It's not
based.
one yet. We're
No.
using my
Okay.
Rotary. So I built it through my Rotary. My
Okay.
Rotary supports it. It's so I don't have to be a nonprofit because all the money goes into my
Perfect.
Rotary.
So yeah, so it's exactly same thing I'm saying here, which is you find ways to create sustainable things without having to be a nonprofit. And that's what also I want to encourage veterans with is, most veterans say, well, I want to, I've lost purpose. I want to continue to serve or help my fellow veterans. And that's great and noble, but you don't need a nonprofit to do that. You need a good idea.
Yeah.
And then you need to figure out how to turn that good idea into a revenue making machine. And that will allow you to help way more veterans than a nonprofit ever will. And I really mean that, because there are about 20 to 30 nonprofits in America that suck up the majority of the money that goes into veteran nonprofits. And so you could actually make more by figuring out how to do what I just said than you could by getting donations from people.
And here's another example. So my wife works for Kaiser. Well, guess what? They have a for-profit side and a nonprofit side.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, and
Yeah.
nonprofits don't mean we don't make profits. It just means you don't pay taxes on it and all that.
Right. It allows you to take people's money and they can write off a tax donation. But I mean, when you get into like corporations, the real money to nonprofits comes from their marketing budgets, not because they're a nonprofit. And so, when I learned that, I'm like, well, marketing is marketing dollars. They'll pay that to a for-profit institute. So as long as you're creating missions that align with their brand and you're serving and instituting that message verifiably, they'll have no reason to not work with you.
I mean, if they want to donate for a nonprofit, they can donate to the Operation Firewalk through the.
Well, right. No, that's exactly my point. There are plenty of ways to do it that are already out there. And I seem like I'm picking on this, but I mean, 48,000 veteran
No, you're not
nonprofits
picking
are
on
too
it.
many.
There's just too many of them.
It's just too many.
They're sucking
It,
up. You might as well call them NGOs.
yes. Well, or jobs programs for vets.
No, I'm
Because
just saying.
most of them, when you dig into the numbers of this, most of them are started by a vet.
Right. Well, because they're
And
trying
I'm
to help.
not right, and I'm not knocking them, but why are they trying to help? Because at some point they turned to one of these other groups for help, and they didn't get it.
Right.
And so they figured out a way through, around, or over, and now they want to share that with the world.
Right. But the problem is, well, how do we get rid of a lot of these that are not needed? And, and the fact that they don't work together, right? That at all or very well, because they're afraid of some of them get grants, some of them get stuff, and they're afraid of losing those grants. And so they don't want to work with each other to help each other. But I want to go back to one thing you said about, I'm just going to say ayahuasca. But it doesn't matter what it is. I'm to the point where I don't care how you get help for your PTSD. I'm no judgment zone at all. I even have a t-shirt. I created a whole veteran line of t-shirts and stuff I haven't put out there yet, but they're coming. It's just one of those, I just sit here, come up with ideas, create it, and then it's a matter of getting it out. But one of the shirts was, it's like, I don't care. And it had everything on there I don't care how you get help, just as long as you get help, because
Right.
we've lost too many veterans because of, I don't want to say the VA is the problem, but some would say that the VA was put there to kill us. Some would pay. Yeah, I'm not saying that that's the reason. I'm just saying that's what they say. I mean, if you think about all the medicine that they kick out of there, I've had Operation Surf come over, and if you ever seen their I don't know if you know who Operation
Yeah,
Surf
I
is.
do. Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I don't know them personally, but I know of they're good. They're a good organization.
go watch the documentary Resurfaced.
Mhm.
They'll talk the one guy who was going to commit suicide after he surfed the bowl of pills he got from the VA. Well, when you go through your benefits, and if you go through PTSD, they don't think you have PTSD if you don't go through the behavior health side also, or if you're clean shaven, you can't have a problem.
Right. Or, let's just talk about how when you walk in there, instead of asking, are you getting outside and working out? Are you getting any physical exercise like walking and seeing the sunlight for 30 minutes a day? Instead of asking those questions first, we just throw them an SSRI. That changes the chemical imbalance, even though that, there's a number of articles that have recently come out that say that these don't actually work in the way that we think they do. So the SSRIs and that component to what they throw at you in the VA is over the top and ridiculous. What they should be asking is, hey, are you working out for 30 minutes a day? Why? Because the science behind that shows that actually does boost your serotonin and neuroreceptors to repair themselves and to create more serotonin, which is what all of these SSRIs are supposed to do, but this does it naturally. If I messed something up in there specifically with wordage, I apologize, just in
No,
case there's a doctor out there listening to this. But in a very general sense, they're not working in the way that I think the VA and pharmaceutical world says that they are, because if they are, people would be a lot happier, and
yeah.
they're not.
Well, I want to go
And
back to what you said about just going outside and exercise for 30 minutes. You're talking to a workaholic, exerciseaholic who hid his PTSD through that, to a point where he has to have knee replacements and shit like that, because that's how he dealt with his stuff. He ran from it instead of dealing with it. So it's saying that exercise is the one thing to help PTSD. I'm not saying it's not, but it's not the only thing, because sometimes people,
no, 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 it's
I
not
know,
the
but
only thing.
I know, but someone's going to take it that way. So that's why I'm saying what I'm saying. So they don't take it that way. What happens is you can have other ways of dealing with your PTSD that is unhealthy, that has nothing to do with some of the stuff that they think it does. And and right now 70% of the veterans who are committing suicide are over the age of 50, which
Right. And just to clarify what I was saying about that, because you're right. I don't want somebody to be like, oh, well, he's got a book out.
Eric
He must
Donoho
be.
is a
Let me be a little bit clearer what I actually am saying about that. If you're 300 pounds and you were, like, let's just say, a grunt in the military, and your whole job was to work out on a daily basis, you may have legitimate injuries that have sidelined you a bit. But the first question, what I'm saying to a doctor should be asking you, and if they're not asking you this, then they're not really caring about you as a whole, right? Which is, are you getting any exercise that moves your blood flow around? And that exercise does not mean hitting the gym, pumping iron, breaking yourself to try to make yourself better. It can literally mean an enjoyable stroll of a walk for 15 or 20 minutes. If you need to stop and take a break, you stop and take a break. But at some point, as veterans, we also have to recognize that our bodies were created in this by the government to be, if you will, sports cars and as such. And so if those people, or if our bodies are sports cars and we're not taking care of them and we're not moving them, we're also not doing our part and taking care of ourselves. It's like my Harley, right? My wife tells me all the time I need to sell it, not because she's worried about me being on the Harley, because I'm not riding it. And a Harley sitting in the garage will fall apart, but a Harley ridden every day will last a lifetime. And that's all that my point is. It isn't about, you know, getting in there and building yourself to the rock. It's about staying active, which that activity then creates, you know, positive endorphins through your body and through your movement. It also helps you create new blood cells. It helps your body just restart and refresh. So
I understand what you're saying. Get
yeah.
this.
No, I just wanted to be clear because
I mean,
I know the person you're talking about out there. And as soon as you said that to me, I'm like, I need to be really clear about that because I am that person too. Running for me was my way of dealing with the thoughts in my head. And when running got taken away from me, I had to find something else.
and that's the whole purpose of getting with them who, you know, veterans as they're getting discharged, as they're getting this, get them into a program that gets them understanding what they needed to go forward. And I understand some of us are our worst enemies when we're getting out. We're just like done. We're not listening to anybody. You got this week-long course that doesn't mean anything, and you get out, and then you're like lost. And that's okay. We're there. We're going to be there after that also. But there's just so many things that we can do for veterans that we aren't doing besides giving them medicine and giving them crap and then everything else that they're doing instead of dealing.
Well, yeah, and I agree with that. I think the transitions program shouldn't happen as you go out of the military. I think it should come 6 months after you leave. I think there should be a secondary, you know, you can go through your first things so you have your resume and all of that in lineup, but I think that, you know, in 6 months there should be a follow-up that you require them to come to that um they then have more things. At that point, they will be ready and willing to sit down and go, okay, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Help
Well,
me.
and it's going to be. And then the whole resume, the other thing that they need to do is their job have it relate to something in the outside in the civilian world.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
the way that our jobs are do not directly. If you're an EMT, if you don't get licensed in the state you're doing it, it doesn't count. If you're a corpsman, you don't, you know, you back in the day you could take the test for LVN, but LVN doesn't really do anything for you. I'm just saying there's just things that they need to
Oh
do
yeah, no,
better.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes. Like if you got your truck, if you drove trucks in the military, there is zero reason you shouldn't be able to come right out into the civilian world, have your CDL, and then we should have loans in place to allow these veterans to get their own rigs so they're not having to lease out from someone else.
right. There's just so many things that we can do. I mean,
Yeah.
actually doing this show and then picking up people off a pod match lately. I've been getting a lot of veterans who have businesses, which it was amazing how many veterans actually have businesses. And it's important to figure what you want to do, whether you're in or while you're getting out, but you should plan a lot earlier. I know sometimes you don't have that choice because something happens to you and you're dealing with it and dealing with other stuff, and it takes a little bit longer, but
Well, and there's a great resource for that for veteran entrepreneurs out there, like myself. It's called warriorrising.org. It's a veteran nonprofit that is 100% geared towards veteran entrepreneurs. They have grant programs, they have learning programs, and the entire curriculum instruction about starting a business is based off of an op order. So it teaches you how to build a business plan, to run a business based on the information the military already trained you on. It is absolutely a top-notch program out there. And even someone I went through the program, a friend of mine started the nonprofit. He is a former Green Beret officer. And he's the epitome of selfless service, same as what you and I are, right? It didn't start out to be a veteran nonprofit. For many years, it was more of him helping veterans. And then the process just naturally took and expanded to what it is today. So if there are veterans out there looking to start small businesses or that own them and need help, turn to them. You'll get mentors and you'll get a community of support.
send them my way, will you?
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
because I'd like to have them on, and then they could just listen to the episode.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll get I'll get you hooked up with Mighty Oaks and We Are
Nice.
Rising.
All right, Eric, thank you so much for being on the show today. We went
Hey,
way over our normal time. Usually it's a 30-minute. We're an hour 19.
Hey, no, it's sorry. I mean, I
Don't
could
be
probably
sorry.
talk for another 45 minutes.
I can
I
too.
said, so it's been great talking to you, and I appreciate you bringing my book and my message to your audience. It means a lot to me.
I appreciate you being here. Now, I do want a signed copy of your book, and I'll give you my
Absolutely.
address, and then I
Yes.
will buy another copy and give it out to a few veterans. Okay.
Perfect. Will do. Yeah.
I'm not trying to be a cheap ass. It's just
No, I know
like
why you're
a
asking
signed
now.
copy of someone's
Yes.
book. It's even my
Yes.
book. I gave it to one of the guys through our Operation Fireworks on the strategic team. He doesn't have a house yet, and he's like, "Well, you didn't sign it." I go, "Turn it open to the page that you sign it on. There's a certain page you sign the books on."
I
And
randomly pick pages though, so just be careful.
no,
I
I
know
don't.
there is, but
Yeah,
I
I do
do.
the one you're supposed to do it on, just so that people know where to find it. But you can do whatever you want.
It's my general way of just kind of messing with people.
Yeah, well, sometimes I stamp in there, stop renting, and then sign it. All
Oh,
right,
well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
my pleasure. Stay right there, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you, Eric. Thank you.